Okay, so today we have a special guest. So today I'll be interviewing Bethan Wright, who is the founder and director of Red Digital, a digital marketing company based in Wales. So Bethan started her path to entrepreneurship at the age of 23 and is currently in her fifth year in business. She's currently has a team and is living the dream digital nomad lifestyle. Yeah, so today we're gonna deep dive into Bethan's story. So learn about how and why Bethan started her business and the challenges she had to overcome. Yeah, so for anyone who's watching the recording, feel free to share your comments and questions below, and then we'll get back to you and answer your questions. Yeah, so Bethan, so let's start. I'll be asking you some deep questions, so it might get weird, but that's just the reality. Like first years are usually weird in
Yeah.
business. Yeah. But so let's go back in time. So before you start your business, like what was it like?
For me, I was in a bit of a situation where I was toing and froing. I wasn't quite finding where I was going to fit. I had a couple of toxic work experiences. I'd ended up in a good job, but it just still didn't feel right. It felt like I could do more. It felt like I wasn't up to my full potential. To the point where I kept taking on extra work in my job because I was like, no, I can do more. I can do more than this. I can take on more. And so I took on literally more workload, which was not the answer to that question.
Yeah.
And just got me stressed. So everything was good, but I feel like I definitely was a little bit of a cork floating on the sea, not quite knowing which direction I was going.
So it wasn't really fulfilling, and like you didn't feel like you were doing something that could like fulfill your whole potential.
Yeah, I knew that there was something else out there for me. I knew that this wasn't what I was going to do for the rest of my life, and that I was just kind of waiting for that thing, that spark to happen.
Exactly. So your corporate experience, like, do you think that really assisted you to get to where you are today?
You know what? I think it helped with my knowledge a huge amount, but I don't think it impacted my drive and what I've become from a business point of view. Excuse me. I know that, like, when I look back, I was 15 running a YouTube channel that had 10,000 plus subscribers.
Oh,
I
really? That's
was,
great.
yeah. And that's how I found marketing. That's how I knew that's what I wanted to do. Even when I was 18, I wanted to learn about marketing. I was in university. I went knocking doors on all the local businesses, and I was essentially freelancing for free so that I could learn what to do for their business. And I definitely had that urge in me. I just didn't know how to harness it. Like, you hear stories of entrepreneurs saying, like, I was that kid in school that sold candy bars and sold
Yeah,
sweets to my friends. That wasn't me. I knew there was something out there, but I just couldn't quite pinpoint it. But looking back, it was leading me in this direction for sure.
exactly. Like everything's just like a stepping stone. Like you
Yeah,
don't know what's the destination, but each
yeah,
step kind of assists you towards that direction. That's
yeah,
awesome.
absolutely.
So what really motivated you to start a business? Like what was the reason?
You know what? This is a little bit of a sad story, so brace yourselves.
Oh, okay.
I've just done a post about this on my social media. Actually, it's one of the first times I've ever spoken about it publicly. When I was 22 or so, I went out to Dubai for a job opportunity that ended up not working in the way that I had planned. After about 6 months, it all came into kind of a bit of a storm, and I ended up coming home. And that situation was really, really impactful to me. It was a really tough one. I was a young girl. I was on the other side of the world. And the job that I had out there, just in my perspective, didn't treat me the way that they should have. And left me in a position where I was being critiqued on my person rather than my work. So quite often some of the critique was I wasn't ambitious enough. I didn't have fire in my belly. And some of those critiques were echoing in the back of my mind when I came home. And when I came home, I immediately got my corporate job within 6 weeks of being back in the UK. And it was a part-time position when I very first started. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to let them decide what happens to me the way that it did in Dubai. So I started up the business freelancing while I was working part-time to make sure my income was subsidized and I never needed to rely on my work. And I think that voice of you're not ambitious enough, you don't have fire in your belly was just in the back of my brain. And it felt to me like starting up a freelance business was almost proving myself, which looking back is awful and is not how you should react. But for me, it was the thing that got me going. And I'm almost glad of that negative experience now, because I don't think I would be where I am today if it wasn't for it.
Wow, that's amazing. Like looking back my journey too, like I feel like something that bad, when something bad happens to you, like that emotion is so strong that like I mean it depends on how you react to that emotion. You can either like just do nothing or prove people wrong. And I think although proving someone wrong is like it's not the best thing to do, it's actually can really help you try your best and like prove people wrong pretty much. Yeah, it's like a challenge.
Yeah. And I remember like they even down to little things, like there was something they had a Range Rover, and I remember there being comments made about like if I ever wanted a Range Rover, and then I would have to like change how I acted and all of these sorts of things. And last
That's
year
messed
I
up.
bought one.
Oh really? Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
And I remember buying it and just think like hearing that voice echoing in my head. And I think as you move on and as you do, like I said, proving people wrong probably isn't the healthiest way to deal with a toxic relationship, but it definitely, those voices in my head have gotten quieter and quieter until they're almost whispers or not even there these days.
Wow, that's amazing. I can't believe they said comments like that. You didn't let that like change your life, so that's great. So obviously, before you start your business, like what are the traits and like habits that helped you to like kind of pursue entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is I will persevere. Like if I want to get something done, you talked in the intro about my digital nomad journey. That came off the back of like a decision made one day and I've just made it happen. And I'm very much like that with everything in life. When I wanted to go to Dubai, even that I made that happen. When I wanted to move to London at 18 to go to university, I made it happen. So that's the big trait that kind of pulled me through my entrepreneurship, is my stubbornness almost. And actually I have a bit of a tendency. I can hyper focus. I can almost tune out the need for food, water, entertainment, break, rest points all seem unnecessary to me. And I can sometimes get into this space where I could turn around a week's worth of work in a day. And that kind of like just being able to knuckle down, and when you're side hustling and do 4 hours and that equal out to be really productive, that was hugely beneficial. Like determination and almost being determined to the point of stubbornness, because I think it's a hard old slog starting up a business, and there's going to be the first year or so where you're like, what the hell am I doing? Was this a bad idea? Was this a good idea? And if you have that determination and stubbornness that you're going to push through, you'll almost do it regardless.
Exactly, yeah, that's very important. Like yes, and also another trait is that you implement more than plan. I think that's not a trait. You just implement. Like some people get stuck in the planning, especially with women. They like they plan over plan, but they don't take action, and they get stuck.
That's a good point. That I think you might be onto something there. I hear a lot of people who I speak to now networking who are like, oh, I'm about to set up my coaching business. I want to set up a VA business. And it wasn't even a thought for me. I didn't think, oh, I want to set up a freelance business and sit on it for about 6 months. It was literally a Saturday afternoon and I was like, screw it, let's do this.
Exactly. Yeah. People notice like you can't afford to just plan and just think. Like if you want to make like, I don't know, for example, 1,000 today, you can't be thinking too much. You have to do the work.
Yeah, just do stuff until you figure out what works for you.
Okay, so we obviously now know your life before starting business. So how's your first year? Like what actually happened? Like you can be brutally honest. Obviously don't overshare, but like obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I feel like I had two first years. I feel like I had the first year that I started the business while I was side hustling, and the first year that I went full time with the business.
Exactly. Yeah.
That both were roller coasters in their own right. So even when I was just side hustling, and I say just, side hustling was how I fundamentally built my business. So I'm not trying to minimize it. But compared to what I do now, it just feels like a distant memory.
Yeah. No, no, of course.
When I was side hustling, I think the hardest thing for me was getting clients and
Yeah, definitely.
balancing what I was doing with work. Like I couldn't take a discovery call at 1:00 in the afternoon to find out whether it was a good fit. I had to wait until the evening. Or occasionally I used annual leave. I would like make sure that when I was on holiday from work, if I had a week off, I'd be like, okay, well, I'll use the Tuesday of my week off to work and I'll book in a day's full of calls. That was really tough because getting clients on board when you can't talk to them at working hours is really tough and sets the scene for them calling you at 10 o'clock at night if they need something.
Exactly.
On that first year, I think I only had about 4 clients within that first year. Like it was really hit and miss for me. There were some months I didn't make a penny. There were some months where I made good money, just because I think it was something I was looking to build. Whereas I didn't have all my eggs in that basket. I was still getting my salary. Like this was just something I wanted to do. And compared to then my first year in business full time, that was a whirlwind because I'm sure we're going to come to it later, but I have a team around me. And in that first year, I went from, it was January 2021 when I went full time. I left my part-time job. I'd kind of transitioned away from full-time work to part-time work and ended up just being fully focused on my business. So January 2021 was when I first started. In the UK here, we were in lockdown when I left.
Oh man.
I know. So I had like family saying things like, are you sure this is a good idea? Like, what about the state of the economy? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And then fast forward to May, and I was bringing on my first staff member. So it moved very quickly. And I almost had whiplash from how fast things were moving. You just said, implement before you plan. I was kind of doing before I had time to implement fully. Even I was trying to bring on systems because things were growing so quickly and it just grew beyond my capability to handle until about the September time. And then we were like, hold it, let's relax here, we need to catch up with everything. And we went through a bit of a spot where we didn't take on any clients because it was so up and down.
Yeah, it's like the wave is just coming. It's like never ending. It's like,
well, I was working so hard on sales. I was like, I need more clients. If I want to grow the business, grow equals clients. And I wasn't thinking about all the other stuff that comes into growing a business, like building in systems, building in standard operating procedures for my team. And it ended up getting a little bit messy, if I'm honest. Like we got our work done and it was fine, but things got a little bit messy and we took on clients that we shouldn't have taken on, and all of these sorts of early mistakes that people make in their first year.
Yeah, that's completely normal. Like it's funny, like when you start, you don't think about like most entrepreneurs, the business starts as like a hobby, and then later you realize, oh, you have to make it like a proper business, like systems.
Well, yeah, and not only that, my business started because I was like, I love social media. I'm really good at like writing social media content and marketing. And I don't do any of that anymore. Like I'm a manager, a director, a salesperson for my business, and a content creator for the business. Like I don't actually write any calendars anymore. I don't do email maps anymore. Like all of that's done by my team. So I think the other thing to consider is if you start in a business with the intention of growing it, you're not going to do that hobby that you wanted to do anymore. You're going to end up doing other stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Like your role will constantly change over the years. Exactly. And what I was going to add was like, I think like, you know, after you became like full-time, like during lockdown, I feel like the reason why the growth was very fast is probably because you're focused and like all your eggs are in one basket now.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've heard a lot of successful stories like that. like where once someone became like full-time in business, that's when all the growth happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think because the way that I did it, I started the business years prior. I was freelancing for a long time. I had gone through some of the process of, I knew how to bring on clients. I had a solid back of portfolio and testimonials to share of people who had worked with me and loved it. I have to this day still some of those clients from when I first started freelancing.
Really, that's
So
great.
yeah. So I feel like I'd learned the basics so that when I think a lot of business owners make that jump from going from side hustle to full time, it's maybe why they still have to learn. They still have to figure out, how do I get clients on board? How do I do X, Y, and Z to make money? Whereas I felt like I had the answers to a lot of those questions. So it was just a case of, okay, let's do it then. Like I knew how to bring a client in. I just didn't have the scale to be able to do it. Now that I had 5 days a week to focus on getting new clients and finding a team that worked for me and learning how to delegate work, that's just all I did for the entire time. Yeah. I didn't have much of a social life. It was just strapped.
Oh yeah,
to
tell me about
computer.
it. Yeah, I'm like recently started trying to sign up for business networking events because I like my social life is so sad.
You know what? But I will say some of my best business contacts have become friends now. Like there's a client that I'm working with right now. Tomorrow she's launching with me and my team a new product that she's doing. And it's so nice that she like turns to me for stuff like that, and I turn to her for new things all the time as well. Like we're launching a new system on how we're doing our content calendars, and I'm like, hey, please could you like have a look at this and tell me what you think. And it's been nice to have like a business bestie almost that like we can call each other like, this client sucks, they made me cry, what do I do?
And it's like having business friends is very important because like you can't talk about this stuff with like people who do not run a business. Like
no, they don't get it.
You feel like an alien, to be honest. Like at least for me.
Yeah.
Like they don't
And
understand
like,
it. Like SOPs, SEO, like they have no
and even
idea
if
what
they
they're
get
talking about.
it, even if they understand in theory like what you're doing, they don't understand the pressure, and they're like, oh well, just do this. Or like I remember I went away with family and they were like, why are you doing your emails? And I was like, because there's no one else that will do them. Like, I don't have colleagues that will pick up my email inbox. Like, and with my job, these clients are paying me directly, so if they didn't answer their email until the next week, then it would be oh sorry, I didn't get back to you, and it would be understandable because it's not their responsibility. For me, if I don't answer a client for a week, they're going to be ringing me, emailing me, they're going to be from everywhere, furious, and probably asking for some money back because I've just dipped for a week. So it's not an option. I have to be on all the time, and usually well-meaning advice, but your friends and family can quite often just say things that make you want to kick them in the head a little bit.
Oh,
and be
no,
like, you don't get
me started on that. Like what we're doing is obviously it's not normal. I won't say it's still not normal yet. Although it's like a lot of entrepreneurs going, it's still not normal. And then it's very and like if you look at parents, like the norm was to get a job, and it's very hard to convince them that this is the new way because they're so accustomed to the previous way.
No, I genuinely remember having a conversation with my mum, not so much because her family ran a business when I was a kid, so they've kind of done or dipped their toes in the entrepreneur world, but my dad for sure was just like, a job with a good pension should be like what we're aiming for here. And I remember him having some concerns, like coming from a really good place of, well, are you sure this is a good idea? Like, how are you going to make this work? And I remember having a conversation with him where I was talking about what we were going to do with tax. And I remember saying, so one of my first employees was my boyfriend. He was already working for me for free through the whole of lockdown, and I just was like, I should probably stop paying him if he's doing all of this stuff anyway. So I brought him on into the business. I remember my dad saying, like, now both of your income is from the business. Like, does that make sense from a tax perspective? What are you going to do? And I was just moving from self-employed to limited. So here in the UK, you can run your own business in a couple of different ways. And I was formalizing the way that we were running the business. So it wasn't tied to me anymore. It was like a business account. And I remember him saying like, you probably shouldn't do that yet until you're making this much money. And I was like, Dad, I'm making a lot more than that much money. How do you think I'm paying me and Josh? And I remember that moment being a like, oh, like he kind of seemed to start to get it. I think they just need to understand that like you're going to be okay. They're not going to need to bail you out at any given point. You're going to be okay.
Like I heard somewhere like they want you to be safe, even if that means you're not successful.
Yeah.
Safety is the key thing. Yeah. And like
which is honorable. It's great.
It's a good intention.
And I guess that's something I like a bit of a call out to people listening as well. Like if you feel like your parents aren't supportive, a lot of the time it's not that they're not supporting you. It's just like their concern is showing up in a way that probably you don't want to hear right now. You just want to hear people tell you like, this is a great idea. You should do it. This is going to be wonderful. You're going to change your life. But realistically, they're coming from your parents' point of view, where they were the ones who stopped you from falling over and hurting yourself when you were a kid. This is the adult equivalent. They just want to make sure that you're okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Give them a year. Give them 2 years. They'll be on board.
Yeah. And they need to see like tangible results for them to be okay with it. Yeah. And I like, honestly, when I start making like decent money, that's when my mom started like taking my business seriously. Before she thought it was like a expensive hobby. It's like she asked me, oh, why aren't you making money? Like, why are you taking calls if you're not going to get paid? Like, sales calls, not all calls will be converted. It's like, why you spend like so much hours on the table? Yeah. So I guess that's normal, I guess.
And then the worst as well for giving away your work for free, though, I swear. Parents will be like, oh yeah, no, my friend needs some help with their this and that. You should probably sort them out. I told him you could do it for £200. Is that okay? And I'm like, no, triple that. What the hell?
Oh yeah. Oh, have you ever worked with friends and family?
100%. You know what? Everyone thinks I'm crazy. My boyfriend works in the business. My mum works in the business. And one of my best friends was a freelancer when I needed an extra pair of hands. So I've done it all.
I mean, I'm not sure if I should ask you about it.
No, go ahead.
So how's your experience so far?
For me, it's been pretty good. I think the hardest thing is the difference between personal life and business life.
Yeah, because you're merging it.
But I'm very formal in work. Like even when I'm talking to my mum works in the business, like let's get that right. My mum, I don't call her my mum when we're working. I refer
like
to
your mom.
Yeah, I'm not like, hey mum, can you do this for me? I'm like, Liz, I need you to do this for me. Like there's just small things in the way that I communicate. I remember my friend when she finished freelancing for me, everything was fine. We all worked really well together. I remember when she finished, I spoke to her about it and she was like, you're scary when you're in work, like you're a different person.
I mean, that's kind of good, because if you don't have those boundaries and like if you're not serious, like hell is gonna go loose, honestly. Yeah.
And this is the thing, like I'm very different with my friends and family in work than I am outside of it. So I think it's actually worked okay for us. The hardest thing has been my poor mum struggles desperately with wanting to protect me, and sometimes there'll be situations that aren't so great that I'll deal with fine and she'll get really stressed about. So that's been the only real thing that's ever been difficult. And if that's the biggest issue, then that's a brilliant issue to have. So
yeah, I mean, that's a good issue to have.
yeah. It's not like we're all screaming at each other.
It's really cute that your mom is in your business. I guess it depends on the family, to be honest. Like some families, they can hire their family because they're obviously like very similar, but some families probably not a good idea. I mean, I wouldn't hire my mom, to be honest. I guess it depends on the person.
And it was my situation. I needed admin support and I needed sales support. My mum at the time was in a sales position. She had been for a good few years and I thought she was great at it. She's I think she's great at it. Like she was killing the game at customer service. She was in like a client relationship role, so it was very focused on customer service and sales. My boyfriend was helping me with all the admin and invoices, so I needed to hire people to fill those gaps, and I already had 2 people in my life that I knew and I trusted, so it just didn't make sense to me to even look elsewhere and have to deal with being a formal manager at that point. It just made sense to me to like pull in people that I knew I could lean on.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like the puzzle, everything just comes in the right place.
Yeah, literally it all slotted into place.
That's really awesome. I'm glad that things are going smoothly for you. Okay, so let's go back to, I mean, you kind of shared some obstacles, but what are the most significant obstacles so far in your like first year?
A lot of it has been like, we took on a few clients that weren't a good fit for us, and they ended up costing us way more time, which actually ended up costing us a lot of money than we had anticipated. So we were working with freelancers at the time, and we had a couple of people that came on they didn't match our ideal customer, to be honest. They came from referrals, they came from people coming to us and saying, we want to work with you. And I think I knew there was a couple of red flags, and I turned a blind eye to it. And looking back, I was like, oh, like, and now I use those as benchmarks.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I think for me, my money mindset had always needed work. So for me, growing the business related to, I needed to make a 10K month. Like, I needed to hit a certain figure, and we took on people that we shouldn't have. And it ended up being that our other clients that were probably had more room for growth and we're our bread and butter, we're going to be loyal and stay with us and make our lives easy and enjoyable in our business, we ended up maybe neglecting them a little bit. I mean,
yeah,
they got their packages, but they just didn't get as much attention and time because we were being so pulled from pillar to post by some of the clients that we had signed on that weren't a good fit. Like I'm literally talking, there was one client in particular that obviously I'm not going to name, but I had a phone call from every day. Every day I had a phone call that there was something that the house was burning down, something was going wrong. And when I spoke to them, I remember thinking, like, this isn't, like, there's nothing really that I can do here. Like, this is standard. And even down to, like, we're in a marketing agency, so we're full service. We were doing social and email, and it was like, okay, we want to change direction, we want to do this, and like, I know you've just finished that email campaign for us, but we don't actually want to do that anymore, we want to do this. And we were just getting like pulled from pillar to post, and it was like, okay, we're not seeing results, why aren't we seeing results? And this was an ongoing thing with a couple of different clients, that like, we're not getting results, why aren't we getting results? And the answer was usually because you won't listen to us about what we want you to do. And now we don't work with people like that, and it's made it a little bit easier. But that was the hardest thing, because it took my time away from being able to manage the team more efficiently and putting some things in place I'm doing now that I would have been doing this time last year.
Exactly.
Had I had the time.
Exactly. Like, obviously I've experienced that too. Like, some like
and you have to, like, don't get me wrong, this is not something that anyone can like prep for.
Yeah, no,
you're gonna do it.
These are normal life challenges. Like, everyone has to go through this. I mean,
you can't learn from my mistakes in this instance. You have to just do it and then go, oh,
yeah.
This is
you have to like mentally prepare for it if you want to start a business. Yeah. I think there's like a client that the project, I still haven't done that project. It's been more than a year. And like you said, it's costing me time and money, because back then I charged like $200. Now I charge more than that, like 1,500. Yeah. So obviously the pricing has changed. In like, you can never underestimate how much changes in 1 year. Like, the price changes, everything changes. Yeah.
And I think a couple of the things come into that. I think for me, looking back, onboarding was a big issue. Like, I had some really clear onboarding outlines, but their perceptions were very different. So like, what they thought they were going to get versus what they actually got were two very different things. And from my side, I was like, but I've told them. But their understanding was different. What they thought they were going to get was different because of whether I'd used jargon or whether their knowledge of my industry, that they thought I meant something else from what I'd said. And now I make a much bigger point to, like, if I am talking through a proposal, I will break down to the nth degree, like, this is what I mean by this. Instead of just saying like 3 posts per week, I'll be like, when I say 3 posts per week on 3 platforms, what I mean is that you'll get duplicated posts. So the caption will be pretty much the same, but maybe if it's on Instagram, it'll say link in bio. On Facebook, it'll say, and I will give them examples and explain everything, because
That's very
beforehand they were
important.
like,
Yeah.
oh, you said we were going to do 3 posts a week and you're just posting the same thing on every platform. And I was like, that is what I said I would do, but I get it why you're confused.
Yeah, that all comes back to communication. Both have to be in the same page.
Make sure your like their expectations are in line before you take a penny from them, because otherwise you're going to have big headaches.
Oh yeah, so you tell me about it. Is there any other challenge? I mean, any like, I don't know, maybe imposter syndrome, that kind of personal sort of challenge associated with the business?
Yeah, I definitely had a bit of that. I still do. Like, I remember thinking that I was going to hit a certain point and feel like I made it. and like, no, like I've ticked so many things off of our goal list. I've even got, there's a whiteboard on the other side of this room that I'm looking at. And on there is written, I want 3 regular clients, I want to make £1,000 per month, and I want a virtual assistant was my only things that I wanted to do. Obviously, we've quite fully like passed that at this point.
Definitely.
But it's nuts to me that like those were the things that I wanted to hit, and I thought like, oh, when I do that, I'll have made it.
Yeah.
and that it's that feeling that, I guess the issue is that there is no feeling of made it, and I was like waiting for it to come. And every now and then I'll be in the car driving to a meeting and I'll be like, oh my God, I'm in like my dream car, working in the job that I've always wanted to work in, built for myself for scratch. I hire my boyfriend and my mum, and then I get like either excited or panicked over like, oh my God, this is all on me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like you're happy, then you're like, oh no, a responsibility hits.
Yeah, exactly. That's the hardest thing. But I like personally, that's the toughest thing for me. But you know what, I just try my very best to shrug that off when those thoughts come along and keep moving.
Exactly. And like, I mean, that's amazing, honestly. Like the journey, like literally starting from 0 to like it's like 6 figures, like that's a big jump. And like obviously once you hit 6 figures, like people say that it's easy to make money once you hit like certain milestone. Like just,
you know what, yes and no. I do think it is. I think money is always the easiest thing you can get. Time you can't get more of.
Yeah, exactly.
Skills is much harder to get than money.
No, definitely not. Yeah, you can't compress that in like 1 month. It takes time.
So there's so many more things that you can get, whereas I think money is the thing we all focus on, the thing that we all are like 10k a month, like 100k a year, like we're all freaking out about these numbers and that we're striving towards. And realistically, if you just build the system to do the thing every day, then that will happen regardless. And maybe focusing your time on things like, for me now, I'm completely redoing the systems within the business. We're doing SOPs from scratch because we had just scaled how I worked as a freelancer for then 5 people, which does not work. Spoiler alert, does not work. You'll need to change that. Yeah. And we're now building out a system literally tailored to our staff, and like, okay, one team member is going to do admin, one team member is going to do social, one team member is going to do email, and just making it a little bit more formalized. And when I think back, like I focused so much of my time in that first year on like money, like how are we going to do it? And I really should have just started doing stuff like this so that it would have been easier to scale.
Exactly. Like I remember, I mean, I'm in my 3rd year, like this is really bad, but I still haven't, I never sent a contract to a client. Like literally, I've been just doing and like, yeah, I know it's really bad.
That's literally, I just talked about the importance of onboarding and making sure those expectations are laid out fully. Yeah. Get yourself a contract, and mine cost me 120 quid to get written out by a solicitor and like really fully lay out the terms of business.
Okay.
Get it sorted.
Yeah. So like that really shows like first 3 years, like you're just doing the work, and then you realize, okay, once you increase like clients, you're like, oh no, I need to create systems. Yeah. And that's actually when I started creating systems, when I had like, I couldn't manage the like workload. Yeah. So I guess that's the reality.
I know, and everyone tells you should do it from day dot, and you should start creating systems and SOPs from when you first start, and like record when you're doing things for the first time. no one ever does it. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I remember listening to that advice. I even have a podcast on my channel from this wonderful lady called Avril Anderson, who is like a CEO coach, but her background is like building systems. And we talked about this heavily in my first year, and I agreed with everything she said, and I still didn't do it. So it's again one of those things that I think is just lessons learned. We'll put it down
I
to
guess
experience.
probably I guess the reason behind it is that, like, why would you do that if you haven't got a client yet? Like, I don't know what, I don't know, like,
well, it's because then probably if you think of it this way, if you haven't got a client yet, then your time isn't worth what it would be in a year's time. If you're 1 year in and you're starting to up your rates and you've got clients and now they're paying more, that 1 hour of you trying to break down and explain to other people what to do and how to do it would cost you a lot less if it was a year beforehand. So the same way you talked about having clients that are like historic from a previous charging rate, it's kind of the same thing. Like if you think about your time as what you charge for it, if you do it before you cost too much, it's not going to cost too much to the business.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So we need to really emphasize that a lot.
Yeah.
Systems from the beginning.
Yeah. And please do go and scope out the podcast as well, because she's got some brilliant advice on how to make that really like accessible. I always had thought about systems and operating procedures as being like really overwhelming, and she's like, just like screen share record something and that's a system. Like if you're telling people how to do it, she's like, write it on a just like a brain dump a doc out of like, first I do this, second I do this, and that's a system. But for me, I was like, I'm gonna need flow charts and spreadsheets and what am I gonna do? So yeah, she's got some really good advice on that.
It's like, oh, that just also reminded me of Latasha. She shared how she does SUPs. I was like, oh, is it that simple?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's like literally just brain dump.
Yeah. Now I screen record the steps, and I have my mum actually in the business. She works a lot with the team, so she will translate that into like step 1, step 2, step 3. But they also get the video recording, and we still don't have SOPs for everything. Okay. But we're getting there.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, it's honestly like throughout the journey, like we're just figuring things out. Like most of the time we just don't know what's happening. We're just preparing, like new things are constantly just coming every year.
Yeah.
It's like a wave. Every year, new wave.
And your business will always change. Like when I first got started, I was like, I only wanted to do an agency. That was my big focus, was like, I wanted to run an agency. Now, a bigger part of my business is probably the coaching side of my business. So I do education for business owners. I do one-on-one coaching and a group program to help business owners like to grow and to make more money. And that is actually like where I see the business going in the future. When if you'd said this to me 2 years ago, I'd be like, no way. Like, I just want to do social media for clients. And your business will do the same. Like no matter what you do, no matter what industry you're in, you'll find your special slot, and it'll keep growing, keep evolving. Like your niche will change, your services will change. Everything is like a moving thing, so your systems will always have to keep moving and keep being updated with that.
Exactly. Yeah, like me, when I started, I was just doing design consulting, which was so random. Like I didn't know that it would be like, I mean, to be honest, the business was actually an accident. So I was like, I don't know what I was doing. Okay, design consulting, because I like graphic design. Yeah. But I never thought that I would actually be doing website design. Like it was out of the, like, I guess the longer you are in business, the more clarity you get of your strengths are. Yeah, everything just becomes clearer. And
for sure. Like even 6 months ago, I called myself a marketing coach. Now I call myself an online business coach, because I don't just help people with marketing. I help them with like how to actionably develop online products or whatever they want to do. And it'll continue to change. I'm sure if you ask me this in a year's time, it'll probably look a little bit different.
Exactly. Yeah, change is very fast.
Yeah. Especially in the early years. Maybe 10, 20 years in, things will start to get, you've narrowed them down to the T where you can. But yeah, those first 5 years, I think, are just, you're figuring out where to go. That roller coaster's got no track yet. It's just floating around in the air.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so one more thing. So So obviously when you started your business in 2017, which was technically closer to 6 years ago, which is crazy, right? And like if you look back at your entrepreneur journey, like what were the key mindset shifts that helped you progress?
Oh, good question. The big things have been getting out of my own way. So I am not, believe it or not, I'm not very extroverted. I'm really good on camera. I'm really good through a screen. But I quite like to just be in my own quiet space. And this is a skill that I've learned through having my business. So not that you need to be extroverted, but you need to be able to talk and to engage with people really well. So that was one thing that I'm still working on. Like I can do it really well through a screen, but I have a speaking event next week in front of 100 people.
Oh, really? Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Oh no, it's not even next week now. It's this week. It's on Thursday. So
oh, really? That's great. I mean, no, you'll do fine. Honestly,
I know, but like it's something you're still always trying to develop, and it still makes me really nervous. So that's a big one. I think the other things have been about pricing and imposter syndrome. Like I probably still undercharge, but I undercharged severely when I first started. Like I would figure out roughly how many hours it would take me to write a social media calendar, and I just charged that, even though I would have to schedule and take client meetings and do reports. Like I only based it on the amount of time it took me to write the calendar, and I didn't count anything else. And my hourly rate was something like £12 an hour, I think. So it barely even covered like taxes, and my hourly rate, what I was getting from my corporate job, was higher at the end of it. So that's a big one. I think especially as women, we struggle with like charging the right amount.
Yeah.
We think like, oh, I'm in this to help people. I want to help people. So we feel like it's a burden on us rather than on anyone's wallets.
In terms of like understanding our self-worth, we're not really honest with ourselves.
Yeah. And I think we're always taught to be polite and helpful. When you think about a young girl, what she's taught to be is basically quiet and pretty.
Yeah.
And boys are taught very differently. From a young age, they're taught to be boisterous and loud, and boys don't get called bossy. Boys don't get called a lot of the things that girls get called when you're growing up. So I think a lot of it comes from just childhood and like how you're socially positioned growing up.
Exactly. Yeah.
The wage gap obviously comes into that. Women get paid less than men, so of course we're going to charge less than men. But yeah, that's a big one. I think if you can get out of your own way in pricing and be really kind of in line with what your clients can afford, of course, but with that caveat of charging enough that and being confident that people will find you that can afford you. You're not going to just lose your clients if you up your rates.
Exactly. And also like probably in the beginning, like I mean, at least for me, like I was so focused on like I wasn't always confident in pricing what I'm worth. Like I was like pricing to the point that it was like a charity. I was like what am I doing? Like this is not a business anymore.
Yeah. It's always going to be a fight, because as you grow as a business owner, your expenses will grow, so your pricing will need to grow to go with it. Again, like these things aren't static. It's always going to change. And I still look at our pricing list right now, and like I'll look at it and go, oh, probably should be charging more for that, but like I just can't bring myself to. I
guess it comes with like you have to be comfortable with the pricing, and that would also help with confidence too. Like some people say, oh, like just start with like a number that you're comfortable with, and then you can increase as you go. Yeah.
I think for me, the biggest piece of advice I would say is start with a number you're comfortable with and charge that once. And then the second time you charge more. And the third time you charge more, until you get to a point where people start saying no. Because if no one's saying no to your pricing, if no one is telling you you're too expensive, then you're way too cheap.
I think exactly.
Probably if you have a serious sales call with about 10 people, my rule of thumb that I was given was that like 3 to 4 of them should probably say you're too expensive. And that's a really good point to be on your pricing, is that if you're still taking the majority of who's coming in, but you're letting people drop off as well, and just focusing on those ones that will pay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway, last question. It's been like, I'm still trying to digest everything you shared, because like it's really like it's actually really valuable advice, and I kind of wish I heard this in my first year to actually like mentally prepare.
Thanks,
Yeah.
appreciate that.
You're welcome. So, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone who's starting out or currently doing their business?
Yeah, so I think I like to focus on the practical side of things, because there's some brilliant mindset focused entrepreneurs out there that you can go and find if you need to hear about things like imposter syndrome and get out of your own way. But for me, practically, I think the first thing that you need to figure out is how you get more clients through the door, and finding a method that is not just getting clients through the door, but it's actually predictable and it's something that you can duplicate. So when I first got started, a lot of my clients came from referrals and word of mouth. And then we hit lockdown, and all of my clients' kind of incoming requests disappeared. I didn't have that because people weren't talking to each other. They weren't giving those back and forth in conversations at networking meetings and, oh, I know Bethan, you should get in touch with her. That all stopped. So my method of bringing clients in the door stopped too. So for me, my method is, I'm happy to share, is actually speaking events. I run a networking event once a month, and I also run a webinar once a month. And that's a really strong way for me to get clients in both the coaching and agency side of the business. And it's something that I know, if I need more clients next month, if I've got not enough money coming in the bank, I plan an event. And it's something that I can actively just do to make sure that I'm taking the next step. So finding whatever your version of that is, whether it's outbound or inbound leads that you're looking for, finding how you create and duplicate leads in the future. And then the systems thing, make everything really clear and map it all out as if you're talking to a 2-year-old, so that when you do scale the business and you need your first staff member or your first VA, external support, like it's all done and mapped out for you.
I mean, like, thanks so much. Like, and honestly, the whole interview, like, I mean, I probably didn't show it that much, but I'm like getting reality checks throughout. Like a lot of like life bulb moments, like very practical and valuable advice that you shared, and like it's so inspiring, your journey. Like, I guess most entrepreneurs, they don't share the beginning that much, at least the first year. Is this not shared enough? And I think that's probably the reason why some people quit early, because they don't know, like they think, oh, no one went through this in the first year, but the reality is everyone did. Yeah.
When you're looking at like the online business space, everything is like 10K in 90 days. Like as if it's a really quick and easy journey. And I feel like mine was so slow and steady. I only left my full-time job at the beginning of 2020. I worked part-time for a full year while I was still building it, and then launched the business full-time in 2021. So like it was a long old hog from 2017 to 2020. These things don't happen overnight.
Exactly. And that reminds me of this entrepreneur who her name is Maria Went, and like she in her 8th year, that's when she made $1 million with her business. It took her 8 years. Like in her first year, she made $63. So if you judge your success based on your first year, like that's a really bad metric. Like you can't predict the future like that.
That's really funny, because we're working on our taxes right now and our accounts, and they always say that like your first year is a loss, like it's a write-off, because you're going to have to invest in so much stuff and all of this. Even now, like we're making a profit, but it's really minor, because I'm making a point of anytime we have money in the business, we spend it on things that are going to further the business. Exactly. So like you might make revenue wise on paper, you might make 100,000, but like you shouldn't, for your first couple of years, you typically won't and see any kind of huge profit margins. It'll all be down to like how things are going and what you can do.
And like that's normal. Like pretty much your first 3 years, you're just surviving.
You're just figuring out like, what do I need to spend money on? Oh, shouldn't have spent money on that.
Yeah.
Or shouldn't have spent time on that, like one or the other, until you kind of figure out a clear plan.
Exactly, yeah. But anyway, like thanks so much for coming on board. And I'm sure that this is going to be very valuable for future and current entrepreneurs. Yeah. So if anyone wants to connect with Bethan, I will share all the contact information in the comment section. And yeah, and feel free to like watch Bethan's podcast, where especially about the systems one. I think people really need that. The systems one. Yeah.
I'm always talking hot topics, like, and on my YouTube channel this weekend, I did like the top 5 ways to grow a coaching business. Like a lot of that is transferable to whatever business you're doing. So I'm always pumping out advice for people.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bethan. And
No,
yeah, I declare interview closed.